Welcome to High Tea with Me, with your host, Katrina Brittingham. You brought your favorite beverage, and she brought the career advice. Now sit back and relax while you get advice that will take you to the next destination in your career or business. And now, Katrina Brittingham.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of High Tea with Me. I am your host, Katrina Brittingham, the Chief Executive Coach of Venture Ready LLC. I have come to talk to you today about how to gain confidence in speaking. It came to my attention yesterday, and someone else has asked me this question before, actually quite a few people, of how do you get over your fear of speaking? And so I came up with some tips, some things that helped me with getting over my fear of speaking and things that I have coached my clients on, and it helped them as well get over their fear of speaking. To me, all of these are equally important, so I am listing them out in random order. So I'm not saying that number one is the most important and two, so on and so forth. I think they're all equally important. So number one is create and practice a presentation in which you have expertise in. I hear some people and some experts say, oh, come up with your signature story. I don't think when you're first starting out speaking that you will have one. You may, and if you do, create a presentation on that and go with it and learn it and practice it. You can practice and start by practicing by hiring a speaking coach and practicing with them in person or either in an online setting via whatever meeting platform that they use. You can practice with your children, you can practice with your husband, a mentor, someone that's professional. Ideally, you want someone who can give you professional feedback for you to get better. The things that you've done well and also the things that you can improve on. So, I wanted to tell a story about how I came into speaking professionally, and it started out actually when I was a young girl, and I was selected for the speakers contest at my church. And this was a big thing because I was very, very shy. To the point that when people spoke to me, I would hide behind my mother's leg. I was just that shy. So to be put in this situation and to be put in a place where literally I was speaking before hundreds of people terrified the life out of me. And I prepared and I practiced and I prepared and I practiced. I got up, I was nervous as all get out, but I got through that speech. And to the day, I still remember that speech. I did not win the speakers contest, but it gave me a little bit of confidence to move on. The next opportunity that I had to speak was, and I say had because I was elected to speak, was in a meeting in corporate. Now, I was not prepared for that. I was prepared as far as my expertise, but I had confidence and insecurity issues. I didn't think anyone would want to hear me. I was in a meeting with my peers and management, and I was nervous as all get out. It was reported to me that I did well, but I still did not like doing it. As a matter of fact, I would push other people up to speak and kind of stay in the shadows. I would even coach them and give them the information because I just did not want to stand in front of people that I felt was more capable and experienced than me and speak because I felt like they wouldn't hear me. So that is that. And number two is, number one, be confident in your expertise. Because what I found was I was called into the room because I did have an expertise that they did not know, and they wanted to hear what I had to say. So number two is know that you are bringing something to the table that people want to hear. They are looking to you as the expert. That brings me to the second time or third time, because it's the third time I had to speak. And a lot of people may not know this because I don't think I mentioned it too often during the show, if I mention it at all, that I am a licensed minister. And I have been a licensed minister for about 20 years. And so I went from the speakers contest, speaking before hundreds of people, speaking to a boardroom full of people, to speaking to another room full of people who are looking, and they are judging some, but they are also looking for your expertise and your expert knowledge. Prior to this, I had spent years studying and learning the Word of God, theology, things like that. And so I had the expertise. I had even taught Sunday school and for adults and for children, but I still had this fear of standing up and all eyes on me on the stage, on the podium, and everything. And so I still did the same thing. I learned what I needed to learn. I practiced it. But for some reason, I just could not get past that fear. And so what I started to do, because I was like, okay, I'm being pushed more into the forefront, is that I started speaking at small gatherings. And I would speak at associations that would have a room with maybe 10 women in it, 10 men and women combined. And I started creating for myself workshops where I would book them at nonprofits, the library, and I would limit it to no more than 15 people. And you know, when you make something for 15 people, maybe about 10 people show up. And I would practice. I was speaking on something that I was an expert in, but each time was practice. And I would take notes on how I could get better. That leads me to number 3 on the list, which is know that you're going to make mistakes. Even if you're the most polished person, there will be something that you forget, you might stumble on, and learn from those mistakes. Just because you make mistakes does not mean you're not a good speaker. I've seen professionals make mistakes, or professionals that, when I say, oh, you did so great, and they're like, oh, but I forgot this. I forgot to mention this, and everything like that. So just take stock, look at what you've done, and get better from it, just like anything else. I will also say, and leave with the next one, because I'm actually going out of order of my list right now, is that you don't be dependent on your notes. And I will say that simply because, number one, you could get disoriented. You're stumbling over your notes, reading from a card, and that does not present the best outcome of your professionalism. Because again, people are looking for your confidence, because if you're confident in what you're presenting, people will see that confidence and they will begin to trust you more as an expert, and that you know what you're talking about. It just is what it is, period. So, and I say that because as a preacher, as a speaker, so many things have happened to my notes. I had note cards, and I would start speaking and maybe get ahead of my cards, and I'm flipping through cards. Wait a minute, I got to get back to my point. Or I would drop the cards and it would be totally out of order, and I had to continue on and speak and do the things that needed to be done. That's where your practice comes in. I have left my notes at home on the table, rushing out, or just, thinking I packed them and didn't. I have had my notes on a tablet, and then the tablet wouldn't start up, or I couldn't get the notes up because of Wi-Fi issues, signal issues, all kinds of things. So when those things happen, you still have to present. You still have to present to the people that you are presenting to. So that being said, I'm speaking to you right now, and my computer just went blank for whatever reason. Guess what? I'm still continuing. um, things happen. Going back to that piece, but don't be dependent on those things. Know what you're going to say. You might not say it exactly the way it was on your note cards, but if you practice, you'll still get the point across to people. And confidence will come over time. It does not happen overnight. It does not. However, you can have a little bit of lack of confidence, but it won't show necessarily to everyone else. And until you pick that up, then just keep on going. A lot of times people will not um, recognize it if you don't make it too obvious. Um, I have just, oh my goodness. Okay. Again, here we go. I'm speaking and I just have this hair that is driving me crazy, and I'm going to ignore it so we can keep going on. But confidence comes over time. But confidence is not that you're not afraid. Confidence is not that you're not nervous. Confidence is you moving forward in the face of those fears and that nervousness. Till today, that shy girl, Katrina, is still here. People don't notice it and they don't recognize it. I'm an introvert by nature, and when we're in groups and people's like, "Oh, who's an introvert?" and I raise my hand, everybody's like, but I am an introvert. And it doesn't mean that you can't be a good speaker as an introvert. It doesn't even mean that it's harder for you to speak as an introvert. An introvert at its face just means that we get our energy from moving away from people, processing our day, getting ourselves together. And so sometimes you have to do that even in the middle of the day, is get on your own to get your thoughts together. Whereas an extrovert gets energy from external forces and people. It does not mean that you are not a good speaker. It just means you need time to take a break for yourself. And I had to learn that too, because I was always told, because I was an introvert, oh, it's always going to be hard for you to speak. But that's not true. It's not. I don't have to put in anything extra, anything more than an extrovert does. And when I realized that, that's when I was able to move further, and when people started being shocked that I was an introvert. Being an introvert doesn't even make you more nervous about speaking. I just am an introvert and happen to be shy to boot. Not every introvert is shy, and not every shy person is an introvert. So that is the thing with that. But like I said, it doesn't mean that you're not nervous. Sometimes before I speak, I'm really nervous, and sometimes the nervousness comes from nowhere. It's not even that I'm necessarily nervous to speak. I just have nerves about it. And then I walk up on the stage and all of those nerves are gone. Or I could be fine until they're saying, and now, Katrina Brittingham. And all of a sudden it's like, I have butterflies in my stomach. My hands might shake a little bit. And I'm like, where did this come from? But I keep pushing forward and I present anyway. And what I find is that people didn't notice that I was nervous. Sometimes I felt like my voice was shaking while I was speaking, and nobody noticed it but me. So know that when you feel nervous, you're the one feeling nervous. No one else is feeling that nervousness. So what I'll say is the next one is, and I said that before, courage or Confidence is not the absence of fear or nervousness. It's the fact that you move on and that you speak in your expertise in spite of those fears, in spite of that nervousness. And so my next one is, don't let fear stop you. Do not let fear freeze you in your tracks. Because if you stop, you will never get to where you want to be in your business, in your personal life, in ministry. Go with boldness and do what you need to do. And like I said, this is coming from someone who's shy. It sometimes is, I can say some things I say is easier said than done, but as I've done things in business and started to speak on other levels, I can say it's not necessarily easier said than done, because it's like once you step out there, and I find myself, depending on the arena, I still have to push myself to go out there and do it and just be like, all right, I'm just going to do it and everything. And I find that once I do it, I realize it was not as bad as I thought that it was going to be. I still was able to come forth in confidence because I know what I know. I continue to get continuing education. I continue to research to make sure that I am at the top of where I need to be in my industry, in my career, and in my business. That in itself, to me, is what gives me confidence, because I know that what I am presenting out to people is the most recent and most current thing that I have learned. It is true. I am the expert in it, and no one can take that away from me. So once I get out there and I'm speaking on these topics, I am able to speak on it with the knowledge that I have. That's why I said prepare yourself, learn that. And if you need help, get a speaking coach, get a professional. And what was the next thing? Oh my goodness, I lost my place where I was going, but it'll come back if it's meant for it to come back. But what I would say is I encourage you to go out and do those things. Join a professional organization. Join Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a professional organization that is specifically geared towards speakers and people becoming better speakers. Most of them are smaller groups. It is a cost to it. In all honesty and transparency, I have never been a part of Toastmasters. I wanted to be a part of Toastmasters, but it just never seemed to be the right time to do Toastmasters. I can't say I would never join Toastmasters. It just never seemed to be the right time to do it. But I know a lot of people and a lot of speakers who needed confidence that joined Toastmasters and was able to build their confidence, and it helped springboard them, because in the Toastmasters meeting, we talked about networking. There's a strong network there. There are CEOs there. There are people who have connections to companies that will, once you have met with them and chatted them up and everything, that can open up opportunities for you. So it's just like any other organization and networking and knowing who you're connecting with. Professional organizations too. You have people from all kinds of companies, all levels of organizations, and it will open up doors for you. Go to your professional development. Every industry has some type of conference for you. Speak at one of those. When I first started out in business, the first thing I did was I signed up to speak at the Professional Associations Conference. I was nervous as all get out, and I had a packed room. I was surprised because I was a virtual unknown, but the topic that I was speaking on, I had people who were interested in it. And again, I spoke from my expertise. I spoke from my experience on the matter, and it went well. Join a board, because you will have to present depending on what you, well, no matter what position you have on the board, you're going to have to present on something. Even if you're the secretary, you're going to have to speak about something. So that can help you. It'll be a smaller crowd in which you have to speak. And so that can help you as well. Don't let what you think people are thinking about you stop you from speaking. Because I hear that too. Oh, they're going to think that I'm not a good speaker. They're going to think that I'm not a professional. Don't let people's looks also change you and stop you. I know I am a person too that I'm big on facial expressions, meaning that I make a lot of facial expressions. And a lot of times, because people's like, well, what's going on with you? What's up with your face? And I don't even realize I'm wearing the expression that I'm wearing. I could have been deep in thought. I could have been thinking about, did I leave the iron on? All kinds of things running through my head. If I'm a presenter, I could be thinking about what I'm presenting on, all kinds of things. So you can't necessarily go by the looks on people's faces because you don't know what's going on. I've been in situations where people smiled in my face, and then when I spoke to them later, they had nothing positive to say. But then the person who had that look like through the whole speech was the one that said, oh my gosh, you had me thinking, oh my goodness, I can take my business to the next level. Oh my goodness, you said things that I never thought about before, never heard of before, and I'm going to take that and run with it. And they have and gone to where they needed to be. A tip that I was taught when I was young, when I was 9 years old, that still helps me to the day, especially if I have some nerves, is when you are speaking, look at the back of the room. Turn your head, move your eyes. Everyone in that room will think you are looking at them. But if you're looking at that fixed point, your eyes will move and scan the audience. Don't look in the ceiling, but look pretty much right at head level, pretty much, but focus on that. It could be a table in the back that has the water pitchers on it. It could be the door, but have that fixed point. And that way you're not focusing on the people's eyes, the people's facial expressions, but you are still hitting everyone in the room. When you start to get confidence and a little more confidence, you can start making eye contact with different people in the audience. I find myself now making eye contact with different people in the audience and everything like that. And even talking to certain people in the audience and everything like that during the meeting. So that comes in time. That does come in time. That comes in practice. It comes in practice also to know, again, by facial expression, you can pick up on somebody or so them nodding or their body language that they're in there, and you can say, so, and talk to that person and get that interaction and then find the next person and the next person. But again, that comes with time, that comes with experience, and you don't necessarily have to do that right away. You'll know when it's time for you to do that. You'll know when you're more comfortable with doing that. Be prepared for questions and answers. Make sure, again, you are the expert in that area and you are the professional in that area to answer questions, because you never know who's asking you questions that know about what you're speaking about. And the worst thing you want to do is when they ask you a question to have an answer that is not correct. And I've seen people do that in speaking, and they had the confidence and everything, and I would ask a question, or someone would ask a question about the topic and they answer completely incorrectly the question. So you don't want to do that, because sometimes people will ask you that because they want to see how well you know the topic, or maybe they want to make sure that there was clarity about a point that you made. because I am one, I do scan the audience even when I'm in certain situations, and it came from teaching people, it came from coaching people, it came from being in the boardrooms with my team and seeing people that were really confused, even though, because sometimes people will be confused, but they won't necessarily say anything because they don't want to feel like they don't know. And so I will see that, and then I would ask a question about it. And people will come back and say, I had that same question too. So sometimes you'll have somebody that just because they ask the question doesn't mean that they don't know. And so you want to make sure that you have an answer and that you have the correct answer. So that is my take on being a professional and being able to learn how to speak and have confidence in public speaking. Oh, there's the point that I was trying to make. The signature system. Coming back to that is, I must say that, or the signature story. And I've been through different coaches who was like, oh, bring out your signature story and everything. And I thought I knew what my signature story was until about, say, the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. And I say this because I thought my signature story was how I came to start a business. And I spoke on that well, and I spoke on that many times. However, it was not until I wrote the book, Why Not Me, which is coming out May 15th, 2020. Not May, March. See, mistake. March 15th, 2020. That I realized that my signature story was not the story of how I came into business. My signature story was how I overcame my insecurities to gain confidence in myself so I can gain the success that I did in corporate, so I can gain the success that I have achieved in my business. And telling that story, I learned that that was my signature story. That was my story that would speak to my target audience. Not to say, because my story about starting a business did speak to some people, but my signature story that speaks to my target audience is how I gained the confidence to go into business, and how I overcame my insecurities and that inner voice that told me that I couldn't do it, and that inner voice that said that they're not going to want to hear what you have to say. And so even getting over what some people, I guess people would call that the imposter syndrome, which I tell people I never really kind of had that, simply because I knew that I was the expert, because I studied and I learned everything I needed to be the expert. I just needed to have the confidence that people would want to hear from me. And that could still be the imposter syndrome. Somebody will probably write a comment and say, that's exactly what it is. So if that's what it is, I had to overcome that. But I did not know that my signature story would be about that. And the fact that it was so personal, and it came from such a personal place and personal space. And sometimes even and I say you might not get the signature story right away, because sometimes your signature story is not a story that you necessarily are gung-ho to tell. And it was something that I was not gung-ho to tell. I told stories in that book that I never thought that I would share with the world, but there I was sharing it. So again, this is Katrina Brittingham, teaching you how to speak to the public, how to get over your fear, how to get over your insecurities, and how to build your confidence in speaking to the public and being an inspirational speaker and a motivational speaker. I That is actually the last point that I have for today. I do thank you so much for joining me here on High Tea with me. I will see you next week, and thank you again for listening. If you need speaking, speaking, speaker coaching, if you need speaker coaching, I am available. You can email me at info@ventureready.net, or you can contact me via Facebook, Katrina Brittingham. You can search me. I'm pretty much the only one. I am the only one who comes up. You can call me on my 800 number, which is 888-712-4956. And I thank you again for joining me for this session with my mistakes and all, talking to you about learning how to be an effective speaker. I actually kept the mistakes in the session because I wanted you to see that even with mistakes, you can move on and you can still speak, and how to push past that. So thank you again, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of High Tea with me. To be a guest on the show, contact us via email info@ventureready.net. Thank you again, and see you next week.